Hello, my name is Julia Lambeth. I'm an educator at WSET School London, and in this video we will be looking at the wines of South Australia. So in terms of climate, South Australia has a pretty warm climate. This can mean we get wines which have quite a lot of ripeness and maybe some high levels of alcohol. In some places there are some natural moderating influences, such as McLaren Vale can be slightly moderated by some coastal breezes, or places such as Clare Valley or Adelaide Hills can experience some lower temperatures due to higher levels of altitude. In terms of grape growing, this warm climate can bring with it some challenges. This can include drought. If the vines are in drought conditions, they can shut down, and this would mean that actually the grapes would be underripe. Some producers use irrigation here in order to give the vines as much water as they need. Drip irrigation is commonly used to give the precise amount of water to the vines that they require. Otherwise, too much heat and sunshine can actually have the opposite effect. We can have grapes which have maybe too much sugar, not enough acidity, too many ripe flavours, or in some cases we can see sunburn on the grapes, which can add unpleasant bitter flavours. VSP training is another way to try and manage the growing of the grapes. Here we can use the natural shade created by the canopy to protect the vines from too much sunlight. In terms of grape varieties, there are a few key black grape varieties and white varieties to mention. For the black grape varieties, we'll be looking at Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, Grenache. These are all grapes that work well in warm climates. For the white grape varieties, we'll be looking at Riesling, Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. White grape varieties generally don't need as much heat as the black varieties do, so where we tend to find these is in regions which have some of those moderating influences. Each of these varieties can be made into single varietal wines, or they may be blended together according to the style of wine that the winemaker wants to make. In terms of winemaking options, there are many different options available to winemakers here. First off, in terms of the vessel, they can use stainless steel vessels for fermentation. Here, the temperature control could be useful in terms of managing the temperature of the fermentation as it progresses. Although some winemakers may choose to use oak vessels instead, which can add different flavours to the wine. For white wines, some skin contact might be used, especially for aromatic varieties such as Riesling or Sauvignon Blanc, and this could add to the complexity of the final wine. For red wines in particular, we're often going to be looking at maturation in oak. And here there are many options related to oak. We can see oak from different areas such as France or America, or oak of different sizes, different ages, or potentially a combination of these things to add different flavours, different complexity to the wines. In terms of the regions, there are several different sub-regions of South Australia to mention, and we'll just talk about them going from north to south. So in the north, we have Clare Valley. And this is one of the highest altitude regions that we'll talk about. Here the altitude goes up to 570 metres above sea level. And with this high altitude, we'll notice a reduction in the temperature. So Clare Valley is a region that is quite famous for its Riesling wines. Here the wines tend to be made in a dry style with high acidity and often pronounced lime and lemon flavours. The best wines will often have potential to age in bottle as well, where they can get more honeyed or petrol characteristics over time. There is also some red wine made in Clare Valley. Here, Shiraz is often the key grape variety, and it will be planted in the warmer parts of the region. And here we can see wines which will have that characteristic blackberry, black cherry, black pepper flavour, along with the high tannins and high acidity, and generally wines that are oak aged. As we move further south, you can see we have Barossa Valley and Eden Valley side by side. These can be combined together in an area known as the Barossa Zone, or they can be labelled individually as either Barossa Valley or Eden Valley. There is a difference between the two of them. Eden Valley is higher in altitude, more similar to Clare Valley. So here we again tend to find quite a lot of Riesling. Riesling that again tends to be dry with high acidity and has pronounced lime, lemon flavours. Barossa Valley, by comparison, tends to be lower in altitude, and this means that it's going to be warmer. So in Barossa Valley, this is where we tend to find more of our thicker skinned black varieties. And this includes Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, Grenache, and often these will be wines that have quite a high level of alcohol and quite ripe flavours. In Barossa Valley, they also have some quite old vines of each of these varieties, and that can help to add to the concentration and complexity of the wines that we find there. As we move further south again, we get to Adelaide Hills. Adelaide Hills, as the name suggests, also has some altitude. Here we're up to about 400 metres above sea level. And here we then find some different grape varieties. We can find some Chardonnay, some Sauvignon Blanc for our white grapes. Chardonnay does tend to be made in a style that again has quite high acidity, can have some citrus stone fruit flavours, but will often also show some flavours of winemaking, such as some vanilla, clove from oak, some biscuity flavours from some lees contact, or even some creamy flavours from malolactic conversion. The Sauvignon Blanc wines tend to be made using stainless steel fermentation and will have those pronounced herbaceous, grassy, leafy flavours that we associate with Sauvignon Blanc as a grape variety. We can also find a little bit of Pinot Noir planted here as a black grape variety. Because it's a little bit cooler than some of the other regions, Pinot Noir makes some very high quality wines, but with a little bit less tannin than the other varieties. As we move to McLaren Vale, this again goes back down in terms of altitude and so is therefore a little bit warmer. However, being slightly closer to the coast than Barossa Valley, we may see a little bit less ripeness or less alcohol compared to the wines from Barossa Valley. But here again, we're often looking at wines made from Grenache, Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe even some Merlot as well. And again, they can be single varietal or they could be blended together. Finally, we'll look at the region of Coonawarra, which is way down in the south of South Australia. Here we have a region that's a little bit more moderate in climate and can actually be a little bit cloudy in the summer. Coonawarra is quite famous for its soils. It has a particular red-coloured soil known as terra rossa, which generally has an affinity for the Cabernet Sauvignon variety. So in Coonawarra, we often find Cabernet Sauvignon, which has a pronounced blackcurrant and mint flavour, along with the high tannins, high acidity and full body that we often associate with Cabernet Sauvignon. Wines are often oak aged and again can develop tertiary characteristics over time. To finish with, we will look at an exam style question. The question says, identify the typical levels of sweetness, acidity and aroma characteristics of a mature Eden Valley Riesling for 5 marks. Now it's useful to bear in mind that in the theory exam you could be asked to describe a style of wine. So here you would need to think about theoretically what the wine would taste like, but remember to use the SAT terminology, the same words as what you would use in your tasting exam. So for our answer here, we can see that sweetness is dry, acidity is high, and we would have aromas of grapefruit, lime, blossom, whetstones, honey, or petrol. Thanks very much.